Hi everyone and welcome to Dance Podcast Season 3. I'm your host, Jasmine Cook. This is a dance science podcast presenting discussions with global industry leaders, aiming to make research and information more accessible and enhance dancer wellbeing, health and training at all levels of the sector. New episodes every Monday, 6 a.m. London time. Thank you so much to The Place for sponsoring today's episode. Located in the heart of London, The Place is a creative powerhouse for dance development that is leading the way in dance training, creation and performance. One of Europe's most exciting, innovative dance spaces, where artists from all over the world come to push creative boundaries, to experiment, and to perform outstanding new work. The Place is home to London Contemporary Dance School, a 288-seat theatre, an extensive range of classes, courses, and participatory opportunities for adults and young people, and professional development programs for artists. Check them out at @theplacelondon on Instagram, and they'll also be linked in the show notes. I'm so excited to be here today. So it's a Tuesday night here, and I'm not sure what time is it there. Is it about lunchtime there, Kendall?
About lunchtime, yeah.
Okay. I'm so excited to be here, I'll say today, with Kendall, who is a personal dance trainer and dance scientist located in Los Angeles, California. Originally from Texas, Kendall was a member of the South Lake Carroll Emerald Bells dance/drill team in Dallas, Texas, before moving to California. She earned her BA in dance science from California State University, Long Beach, where she trained in ballet and modern dance, and also an MSc in dance science from Trinity Lab and Conservatoire of Music and Dance in London, in the UK, where I am now, where she completed dance science research involving perfectionism and self-efficacy in online dance classes, and also trained in contemporary dance. I'll just do a little bit more and then I'll let Kendall introduce herself. But Kendall is also a certified personal trainer and a certified Pilates instructor with dance specialization. She's also a certified health coach. Kendall works with dancers all over the United States on strength, conditioning, and flexibility to enhance performance and prevent injury. So Kendall created Body Connect to allow for accessible dance science education for dancers and dance educators, which I'm sure a lot of people have probably seen on Instagram. She provides one-to-one training sessions and educational workshops for dancers and dance teachers. Welcome, Kendall. It's great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
No worries at all. Is there anything you'd add to that bio? Have I missed anything out? A little introduction to yourself?
No, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. It was interesting when I went to my undergraduate degree at Cal State Long Beach. I felt like I was just kind of dipping my toes in the water of the world of dance science, because then I realized there's so much more out there, and that's why I wanted to go do my MSc at Trinity Laban as well. So it's really been eye-opening, and it's been like a great journey so far, even if it wasn't always clear from the beginning where I wanted to go.
Yeah, definitely. So just looking at that a little bit, that leads really nicely in. You mentioned sort of lots of different potential pathways in your early career. So I'm sort of talking about Pilates and then PT, lots of different things. So what did you sort of enjoy and not enjoy about all of these different areas that you kind of tapped into, and how did that kind of lead to what you do now?
Yeah, so I decided to do those certifications to not only give myself, the ability to train people, to train to train clients, but to just learn more about the human body, and especially movement assessments too. For instance, I felt like I could teach dance, and I've been doing dance for so long, and I knew how to analyze movement, but actually like going through exercises and understanding like the principles of Pilates specifically, understanding those principles and then how it can apply to dance and apply to the practice itself was really eye opening as well. So all the certifications are kind of a longer process, but I do really enjoy the learning, and I'm a very self-driven person, so I want to be able to do all those things and do those certifications, and all of them I kind of did on my own time, except for Pilates, which is more of like a summer intensive certification. But I loved it. Like it's been great, and I get asked a lot about my certifications, and people that I know that are going through it now and asking how it was, how are the exams, how did you enjoy it? So which certification is better, and so giving that advice too to colleagues has been nice as well.
Yeah, definitely. I might add myself to that list. I don't know if there are things that I might want to look into this year or maybe next, but you might find me on that list as well. So maybe what you mentioned there about being quite a driven person, maybe that kind of feeds into my next question, which is about grad school. So you said you really enjoyed grad school being, so I think people call it different things. I'm not sure in the UK or there. Grad school being your
Mhm.
master's at Trinity Laban. Um, yeah, so could you tell us a bit about what you enjoyed or didn't enjoy there? You mentioned you really enjoyed the academic side and the research side, and potentially a future goal might be a PhD.
Yeah, so right now I have kind of put that goal on hold. That's a long-term goal. There's a lot of other things that I want to work on before I go for the PhD route that I've realized now. But my master's program was great. I mean, I decided to kind of, it wasn't something that I always had planned for myself, and kind of just fell into my lap, and I decided to just go for it and just do it. I'd never been to London before and never really been out of the country, honestly. And so it was a big adjustment for me. It was definitely something that was huge and felt like a big step, but I was able to meet a lot of other Americans actually that I'm still friends with today that were in my cohort, and also with other people just from Europe in general, as well as like the amazing faculty at Trinity Laban and all the people that are there that create a nice like dance science environment, dance science community. And I wanted to do my master's to be able to do my own research in the field and kind of go more of the research route, learn more about that stuff, because in my undergraduate program it was more of like the classes and understanding, I think I took biomechanics, I took motor control, I took anatomy, like those sorts of academic classes, but it wasn't really research focused. And that's something that I wish I had a little bit more of in my undergraduate program. So yeah, I wasn't sure what I wanted to study, and the MSc program seemed like a broader sense of dance science that allowed you to go into different pathways if you wanted to. So it felt like it was a better option for me at the time, because I was actually at the time I had multiple jobs, I was doing different things, and it was kind of a bit overwhelming to try to teach Pilates and do personal training and teach dance and do all these other things. So it was a great way to just kind of I'll put all my energy into one thing and focus on what I actually want to do, like what my end goal was. So that's kind of my goal behind it, and I feel like I really attained that by going through the program as well.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. And actually, I had a little kind of peek at my stats the other day, and I noticed that my US audience is really growing. I'm not too sure why. But I'm sure that's really great to hear for maybe people over there who might be considering
Mm-hmm.
programs in London for dance science study. So that's great. Thank you. Just to touch on your MSc research a little bit. So it's looking at perfectionism and self-efficacy in online classes. Can you tell us some more about the focus of this? A bit about the methods and data collection sort of process, anything you found interesting, and then the results as well.
Sure. So this MSc research project, this was my thesis research project, but it started. So I was still in the cohort in the program when COVID started, when the whole pandemic started. So everything shut down. We all moved to virtual setting, which all of us have probably experienced that couple of months where no one really knew what was going on. And so we ended up kind of combining some other students' research projects, and then made a bigger research project that was led by a few faculty members, studying the motivational and emotional impacts of COVID on dancers and dance teachers. So my research specifically focused on multidimensional perfectionism and self-efficacy for online learning. So self-efficacy is the confidence that you have to complete a task. So in this case, it was how confident you feel about learning online. We did a big survey with multiple questionnaires, and the two questionnaires that I looked at were multidimensional perfectionism, and then the like online learning self-efficacy scale. But within those questionnaires, there's different subscales too that you look at, and certain questions coincide with different subscales. So for the multidimensional perfectionism, the three subscales that we looked at were striving for perfection, negative reactions to imperfection, and perceived pressure. So those were kind of the three dimensions, I guess you could say, that we looked at. And then for the online learning self-efficacy, we looked at learning in an online environment, time management, and technology use. So three pretty big things that are involved with online learning too. And then we were basically just looking for any relationship between those subscales, and we didn't find any significant relationships between, well, all but one actually, all but one, but it was a very small correlation there. But it was a positive correlation between time management and striving for perfection. So basically, as people manage their time better, they strived for perfection a little bit more. So that graph, that correlation was going in the positive direction. So one thing that I did find interesting in the results was that looking at the self-efficacy scale, technology use scored the highest among the participants. So they felt the most confident in using technology, which makes sense in our world today. And then for perfectionism, the subscale striving for perfection was the highest scoring among participants. So that shows that there was some presence there. It wasn't enough to be able to find any significant relationships there. And that could have been due to a smaller sample size. It could have been due to a lot of things within the project, but it was still great to be able to. I mean, it was great. It was a great experience. A little stressful during COVID and online, and just writing a thesis paper is a little stressful and long. So it was great though, and especially during COVID, I kind of wish I was able to do the research over again, but in a different setting, because it would be interesting to see now that we have online and in person classes that are coming back, if we could compare the two. I think that would be really cool to be able to look at the difference and kind of how people felt at the beginning of the pandemic versus how they're feeling now, which I would anticipate that they would feel a little bit better about learning online, or I do know some people that absolutely hate it too. So I guess it's just all about who the individual is.
Yeah, definitely. My next question, I'm going to ask you a little bit about your work at the moment, but just quickly, so is that an area that you would want to look at in the future, perhaps, if you went back and did further study?
You know, I know I just said that, but actually, no, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to actually look at that. If someone else wants to, that would be great. But I'm much more interested now, and we'll get into this like when we talk about the stuff that I'm actually doing now. But the work that I do now is much more focused on uh, like biomechanical analysis, like things like alignment and strength training. So I would, if I were to go do my PhD and do another research project, I would want it to be focused more on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was thinking about your work at the moment, I was going, oh, it's really interesting because it doesn't quite, yeah, not that it doesn't quite match up, because obviously it's all linked, but it doesn't quite
Yeah,
match. Yeah,
it doesn't.
that's so interesting. So tell me a bit about your work at the moment then. So you mostly do, you sort of said weekly sessions online, sort of the nature of your work, about who you work with and why, like what are the students' goals generally?
So I work with a variety of dancers actually. So my youngest right now is I think 6, and my oldest is maybe like mid 30s, I think. So quite a broad range. Generally, I work with students that are about like ages 8 to 15, around there. So they're pretty deep in the competition dance world and training every day at the studio, like very dedicated students. And then I have a handful of dancers that want to train, want to do strength training, but don't dance as much anymore. So it still can be beneficial. So a lot of the focus, a lot of the things that I talk about today is going to be focused more on the younger side of things and kind of that age group between 8 and 15. But we're focusing a lot on mind body connection with the younger students, especially. So just getting them to actually understand what it feels like to contract a muscle, the difference between like contracting their muscles and stretching their muscles, like what does that feel like in their body, and just understanding proprioception and understanding where their body is in space. That way they're able to utilize that a little bit more in their technique, because at that age it's really easy to just kind of flail around for lack of a better term. And it's natural. I mean, they don't have those skills yet for their body to know how to do those things. So it takes patience, and it just kind of comes with age too. But there are things that we do that are helpful for them to just understand, proper dance technique now. And then with the older students, I'm really working a lot on developing strength for proper dance techniques. So mostly I feel like I work on turns a lot. That seems to be really popular right now. Just working on more pirouettes, getting more rotations, but then understanding how much you actually need to engage your muscles and think about all the different things, all the different checkpoints every single time you're turning. It's a lot, and it can be a lot of work. So kind of strengthening those muscles, getting everything to work together is really the main focus with those ones that want to work on turn technique.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to ask you like a bit more about it in a sec. But can I just ask, how was that with like doing it online? Is that difficult or challenging doing things like turns and jumps online? Do a lot of them have space or like, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, generally they have enough space, or they'll go to a studio. Like if they rent studio space at their home studio, so I have some students that do that, so they have enough room. It kind of depends on their goals. Sometimes we don't. We're actually, they want to work on technique, but we actually don't practice any turns, and we just work on strengthening the muscles and understanding what they need to do in order to do the turn. So we eventually integrate it into the technique as well. But doing it online is definitely different than in person. But I think that if students are open to doing online training, it can be just as beneficial as in person. I mean, as a trainer, I had to get really good at articulating exactly where I want your body to be, exactly what to do with your shoulder, with your hands, change this. So I've gotten really good at communicating that way, which was a great skill to have. It's definitely one that I didn't have before until I started doing more virtual things. It's really easy to just use tactile cueing to bring their bodies in a different position, and I still do that when I do see in-person clients from time to time. I still do that, and now it feels kind of weird for me because I haven't done a whole lot of in-person lately, and I went from doing all of that and not having the skill of articulating those body positions to now kind of combining the two, which I mean, I think it's made me a better teacher for sure, but the online environment is still just as beneficial, and I try to tell people that as well, because it just really depends on what we're working on. And some people prefer in person, and I totally get that. But I always say, don't knock it till you try it, because we can still make progress online.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it just proves that it can be done. And there are so many things that dancers can do at home still to help technique, which is obviously so relevant today. So the other thing, just quickly as well, this isn't like in the notes, but I was just wondering, so do you do group classes as well in studios with a studio?
Yeah, so I do from time to time studio master classes. So I do some locally. I've actually traveled as well. I've traveled to Utah. I recently traveled to North Dakota to do a master class for a studio. I'll kind of wherever it comes up, and I don't necessarily, like, it's not the main thing that I do, but I really love to teach those group classes, because it's actually, I mean, I love to teach them, but it's almost hard to get everything I want to do in just 2 hour time blocks. It's usually about 2 hours, and I feel like, oh, but there's just so much more, and like, oh, I didn't explain this correctly, or I mean, I didn't explain it enough. I feel like they didn't get it, and sometimes for myself, I have to remember this is just a tidbit of information that they're getting. They're just getting some basics and understanding, like, why we're doing these things. So I always try to explain why we're doing it, how it's affecting your body, what it should feel like, and kind of that way they're getting both of those worlds combined, the like exercise and the dance technique. So but I do love to teach group classes, and I do some online group classes as well.
Yeah, sure. So you also do online workshops and courses for teachers. Can you tell us about these? And I guess I'm interested, why did you begin to create these for teachers? So what was your aim in starting out? And what have you learned from making these?
So I kind of, the more I was teaching online, the more students I was talking to, and even some teachers that I was talking to, I realized that they're struggling a lot with, or a lot of teachers struggle a lot with giving their students cues that make sense to them, like make sense to their individual bodies. Because you could teach a class and give all of these cues, but for this one dancer, it may not make sense to them or it may not apply to them. And that can be really frustrating as a teacher. Like, why aren't you getting it? Like, why does it not make sense? And because you don't know how else to articulate it to them. And also teaching alignment in a way that'll help their dancers get better with their technique and be able to work on those things in class. It can be hard to articulate that too. So kind of with a lot of teachers, I found that they know what to fix, but they don't really know how to fix it, or they know what it should look like or what should be, what they should be doing, but they don't necessarily have the ability to to push them further. So I created an anatomy course for dance teachers to learn about the human body, to understand like it's more of like a crash course. So I mean, it goes in depth, but it's not like you're taking a college course on anatomy. I mean, it's a shortened version of it, but it's enough for teachers to understand the muscles, the bones, the alignment structures, the things that are causing more or less turnout, for instance, and how to apply it to their dance technique so they can teach it in a way that makes sense to different dancers, because every body is different, and it's hard as a teacher to appeal to everybody in the room most of the time, almost impossible sometimes as a teacher, and it can get frustrating for teachers as well. So that's kind of why I created it, and I've heard that feedback from a lot of teachers as well. And some of the workshops that I do are more focused on specific things. So I have like an alignment workshop, a core workshop, things like that that are still focused on the anatomy and teaching them things about the science behind it. And then those will have a few corrective exercises put in there, or like strength stability exercises, things like that, depending on the topic as well.
Yeah, amazing. So something that stuck out in your philosophy when we spoke sort of last time is about training dancers. And when we spoke about it, you said that you really want to focus in the like on the training that you're giving them, but also on the education that you're giving them and empowering dancers to understand the why behind the training you're giving them. I've explained that absolutely awfully. Yeah, I'm sure.
No,
But you know what I'm so yeah, for young dancers to understand the why behind what they're doing, as well as getting the training that you're giving them. Does that make any sense?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Understanding the why.
Yeah. Why is that so important to you?
Um, I wish that I had this sort of training when I was younger, when I was growing up. I really felt like, and I can only speak for myself and my experience here, but I really felt like dance gave me a lot of confidence, but also took away a lot of confidence at the same time. And I think that that's I can't really explain it, but I'm sure maybe you've had a similar experience. It's kind of a lot of things surrounding body image and comparison, things like that, where I was just, I even noticed myself thinking, how come I can't do what the other dancer is doing? Or why doesn't my body do that? Why am I not as flexible? Things like that. And I know that those thoughts still are circulating through these younger dancers' heads because they tell me about it. And I hear about it from the parents or from the teachers as well. So I I really want to build up their confidence and help them actually feel good about their technique and feel good about their body. And even hearing stories about just negativity in the competition world or within the studio is just so heartbreaking to me, because I don't want anyone to go through that. And I care a lot about my dancers too. So I want them to understand their bodies. I want them to get better at dance, obviously. But usually, when we're doing this sort of training and they are making those connections and having those light bulb moments between the exercises we're doing and the technique that they're performing, it really just instantly improves their confidence within the session. And then carrying it with them to the studio is kind of the next step. And for those that get to that point and feel more confident in the studio, I can tell that it really just like it just transforms everything for them. And I love hearing that feedback too, because sometimes parents will tell me that, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like I've really tried to empower them and hopefully given them more confidence at a younger age that they can carry with them for the rest of their dance career.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that sticks out to me about that when I kind of think about what my own training could have been like, I was really lucky. I had really great experiences, but I think knowing that you're doing something about it and knowing that they're really working on it for themselves and they can understand it, I think that probably really gives them, yeah, like a sense of achievement when they,
Yes,
even
yeah,
if they're not where they want to be yet, they'll always have that sense of achievement that they're getting there. Does that make sense? I think that's,
yeah,
yeah, that's
definitely.
about it. And yeah, I think that's great. I hope that I can, yeah, because I teach dance as well, and I hope that I can give my students that too.
Yeah.
Do you find that dancers tend to take well to it? So do you find that they tend to understand sort of the information you give to them? How do you break it down in a way that they can understand it?
It kind of depends on their age. Also depends on the dance environment that they have grown up in or are currently in. Mostly with the younger dancers, for instance. So I mostly, like I said earlier, work on feeling their muscles, understanding, okay, do you feel this muscle here? Do you feel the difference between this muscle and over here and over there, that sort of thing. So understanding the alignment, feeling their muscles, understanding the difference between one posture versus another. So I use a lot of imagery and a lot of metaphors whenever I teach, and so I thought I'd actually share one that I recently came up with. I've never heard this one before, so I'm pretty proud of myself for coming up with it. But maybe I'm sure it's out there. But I was talking about with one student talking about jumps and talking about how you need to plie, obviously, to jump high. And she wanted to improve her jump height. She wanted to, we were doing lower body strength exercises, lower body power exercises. And when we were doing those exercises, it made sense how much force you needed to push off of the floor in order to get up. But I compared it to a trampoline. And if you're standing on a trampoline and you just try to jump without really bending your knees, or bending your knees maybe a tiny bit, you're not really going to go that high at all. And on a trampoline, like you can fly, like you can go way up high if you push down into the trampoline in order to go up. So I kind of played around with that, and that seemed to really have a light bulb moment with that dancer, because it made so much sense. And I was talking about, obviously, you're not on a trampoline, you're on a floor, but that means you're going to have to push even harder because you're on a hard surface versus a softer surface like that. So those sorts of things usually help a lot. Sometimes it takes multiple sessions for them to get it, which is normal. I mean, usually you're not going to pick something up right away, especially dancers like to do that, like to really pick things up quickly and try to I feel like challenge themselves to get things right away. And so it can be frustrating a little bit when it still doesn't make sense after your third time doing it, but it's once you see those light bulb moments, it makes a lot of sense for them, and it's really actually satisfying for me as well to be like, oh, okay, that's what worked.
Yeah, for sure. I can feel like dance teachers everywhere listening, writing that down right now, like in their notes on their brain.
It's a good one.
So good. I'm going to steal that. That's so good. It makes
Yeah,
so much sense. Yeah. And I've never heard it before either. I think you're right. It's a new one.
that's good. I feel like most kids have probably been on a trampoline, so it makes sense, but I don't know how else to say it for someone who hasn't been on a trampoline. So I'll get back to you on that one.
It's like a development, but we've got to start. Have you got any other observations of working with dancers? So I'm thinking more maybe physical. What do you tend to see? So you said you work with mostly like 8 to 15. What do you tend to see in this age group, sort of maybe in terms of alignment, or yeah, training habits?
So the biggest thing, I mean, everything's kind of stems from alignment. Usually, if we go back to the turns example, there's usually something going on with the alignment that's affecting their turn progress. And why they can only do 2 turns instead of 4 is probably something to do with their alignment. And not only when they're in the turn, but when they're just standing normal and being pedestrian. So I see a lot of hyperlordosis in the lower back right now that's kind of coming up, especially with the younger ones, like under the age of 10. And I don't know this for sure. This is just kind of my anticipation, but I have a feeling it has something to do with the competition dance world moving into like more acrobatic tricks and more of a gymnastics kind of acro background, because they're constantly in that back extension, like an extended position, pretty much anytime they're doing those tricks. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then as a result, they're not activating their core as much as they need to, or they just don't know what that feels like. That's come up a lot too, just a lot of dancers not really knowing what it means to engage their core. And I didn't really get that until I was in high school, probably until I was maybe 16 or 17. So that's one thing I noticed. And then a lot of things with the hips and knees kind of related, a lot of like weaker glutes for jumps, so they can't, especially the younger ones, like they can't jump as high because they're not actually using their muscles. They're just kind of going through the motions or imitating the movements, but not feeling it in their own body. And then as a result of the weaker glutes, their knees kind of will fall inward or like wobble in and out, for instance, if they're bending their knees or going into plie. So I see that a lot as well, just with alignment. So I feel like with most of the dancers I work with, those two things are pretty staple uh, considerations for the work that we do. Um, Now, not every dancer is like that, but that is the trend that I've seen with the dancers that I've worked with, at least.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I can kind of see that in, yeah, some of the kids I teach, like thinking about it now, that's kind of, yeah, that tends to come up a lot. And it's really, yeah, I wonder what I was like at that age as well. Like, I wonder if
I
I,
know.
yeah, I saw your Instagram post the other day. You did one on engaging your core, right? And what your dance teacher actually means when they say that. And I thought that
Yeah.
was so, so helpful to kind of break it down for them. So that was a good little insight. What do you notice as well about overtraining in young dancers? So you said they were at the studio quite a lot of nights a week. What do you notice here?
Yeah, I the whole mindset of like no pain, no gain, or keep taking classes in order to get better. That tends to be like a mindset that's still involved in the dance community, I've noticed. So especially when competition season rolls around, which this year it's starting earlier. I have students that are already going to competitions every other weekend. I think because of COVID, they're starting earlier and spacing them out or something, but usually that involves traveling, and some students will fly to a competition in another state, or they'll drive for 4 hours to a competition. So I feel like they are constantly trying to take class instead of understanding the importance of rest. And for the younger ones, I think sometimes you could argue, well, they're in school for 8 hours a day, so they're not dancing during that time. That's resting. Like, no, that's not resting. We're resting your whole body. Like having a day where you actually are not dancing is really important. And you can do other things during on that day. Go play outside, go do an activity, hang out with friends, something that's not related to exercise. And that's something that I even struggle with right now, personally. But that overtraining mindset is what leads to injury, and a lot of teachers, a lot of parents in my experience don't quite understand that. They think that if their kid just keeps going and going, they're going to get better, and they want the best for their students, and I understand that. But I have noticed some injuries that come up, and the worst thing in the world to hear is when you ask. I usually start my sessions and ask my dancers, okay, how's your body feeling today? How's this week been at dance? And the worst thing is hearing, oh, well, like my ankle's been hurting for the this week a little bit, but it's okay. Like it'll be fine. And my mind's just like mind blown. Like, no, it's not fine. What's going on? Tell me about it. And then you find out that it's actually been hurting for the last 3 weeks, and they haven't said anything. And my heart breaks again, because I feel like if they did say something, then they're either kind of pushed aside, or if they didn't say anything, then they could just keep going. They wouldn't lose their spot in the dance. They wouldn't suffer any consequences, if any. So I also, as part of like building confidence and empowering them, trying to be a listening ear for those things, really, I noticed help some of those dancers as well. You can almost tell when they need it. So, overtraining in general, I recently made an Instagram reel about it actually, which was kind of fun, just about overtraining and how your body needs rest to be able to get stronger and to be able to recover from the hard physical labor that you're putting your body through every time you're at dance.
Yeah, it's definitely something to be more aware of. And I'm definitely going to link your Instagram in the show notes because there's so many useful bits on there, like little nuggets that people can take.
Thank you.
So yeah, you offer dancers so much through like your online training and things like that, but ultimately you do kind of have limits, which you've sort of just touched on there because of the dance studio schedule. So I guess you can't change the studio they go to, you can't change their classes. So if I could say, what's sort of one thing that you wish all studio owners or all dance teachers knew about dance science or training, what would that be?
Honestly, what I was just saying about overtraining and the importance of rest, kind of understanding periodization as well. And when you're leading up to a competition, you probably don't need that extra rehearsal the day before competition to make sure your dancers are ready, quote. They probably need to rest in order to perform their best the next day. So understanding, you're trying to reduce injury, because the more you push your dancers, and you want a healthy balance of it, if you want to push them to be better, but you don't want to be pushing them so hard to where they're getting injured, and that happens a lot, and then they have to sit out, or then they push through the injury and it just gets worse and it ends up still being there 3 weeks later. So just helping the dancers reduce injury and helping them perform better, and understanding that that's all connected, overtraining to injury to performance. So I think that progression is really important, just when you're planning schedules, but also planning rehearsal times for competitions or shows or whatever it might be. I talk about competitions a lot just because that's mostly the dancers I work with, but it can apply to anywhere, really, any performance.
Yeah, definitely. That's such a good one. How can dancers, so looking at like younger dancers themselves, aside from your Instagram page, how can they learn more about dance science, or I'm going to call it like training smarter for themselves? So instead of just doing more, how can they learn more
Mm-hmm.
about training smarter for themselves? Any resources that you recommend for them?
There's several dance science professionals that are on social media that are great people to follow. A lot of physical therapists that I know that offer information out there for free as well. But one thing that I do want to say too about social media is sometimes the information is not good. I mean, sometimes you can take information and take exercises and it may not even apply to you, or it may not be true for you. So just always checking your sources and kind of taking everything with a grain of salt. I mean, I try to put that message out there on my Instagram, but I see other like dance teachers or people in dance fitness around that world that are putting things out there that maybe don't have the qualifications to do so, or maybe aren't really teaching the best practices for dancers or for their students. So just kind of keeping that in mind too. But I think that's something that's really big in the power of social media right now, is just having those resources readily available, and then all of those professionals that are in the dance science community that are putting stuff out there on social media have their own resources too, to either work with them or do like ebooks or anything like that that's out there as well. Like I have new virtual programs coming out too for turns and jumps, and I don't want to just talk about my services, but there's so many other people out there that offer great services like that as well. So just looking for those opportunities, and I try to share some on my social media as well. And any like online workshops, power of online training is that anyone can take it. You can be anywhere in the world, which is really great, because I feel like that's really opened up my audience to work with more people and really like serve the mission of my business with creating accessible dance science education to as many people as I can.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was kind of my last question for you, was going to be, you've obviously got quite a big following on social media, which aims to share accessible information for all dancers and dance teachers. Why is this something that you are so passionate about? And then also, you've kind of just covered it there, but if there's anything else, what are the challenges that come with this?
So I love sharing all this information because it's so niche and so specific, that not a lot of people are doing it. And it's when I've been told that a lot of dancers, when they come across like my Instagram page, for instance, they're like mind blown, like what, like I can improve this, I can do that, and like yeah. So I'm super passionate about it because I firsthand know the difference that it makes in your dancing, and I feel like I should have been doing it all along, but I didn't start actually doing strength training or any kind of like cross training until I was in college, doing my undergrad, which is crazy because I have 8-year-olds that are doing it now, which is amazing. But some of the downsides too of just like being on social media. I mean, what I was talking about earlier about like checking your sources, but also I love to put that information out there, and I love to engage with like my community, but it can be really draining to be on social media all the time, and that's something that I definitely experience personally. So my main focus is my training sessions and the dancers that I work with weekly. And then social media is just like extra tidbits of information to put out there that I try to give that information and make it accessible, but it's definitely not everything that you need to know. I mean, I usually will not sit and write a whole long explanation. That's a lot of work that I want to give. I want to give you all, but not everyone has. We don't have the attention span for that on social media. So I try to just give little bits here and there, but it's also important for the audience on the receiving end to understand that okay, this is just one piece of the puzzle. This is not like end all be all. So um, yeah, my advice and plans change from dancer to dancer based on their bodies and their training levels as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's so important to point out. It's been so great to have you on today, Kendall. I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you. Is there anything else you want to discuss or mention today?
The only other thing I was thinking about was that it takes a lot of patience to make all of these changes in the dance community. I mean, for a community that is very rooted in tradition, it's hard for dancers and teachers to be open-minded into changing those traditional habits that they've been taught all their lives. Usually, it's oh, I learned it this way, so I'm going to teach it this way, and that's worked for a long time. But with these the new research coming out, new scientific practices and new ways of teaching that are coming out, I think it's always good for teachers and for students to be constantly learning and trying new things and understand like what works for them. So I just encourage everyone to be open-minded and to look for those opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's such a good take home message. Thank you so much, Kendall. It's been great to chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully chat.
Yes, it has.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Tune in again next Monday. And in the meantime, follow at Side Dance Podcast on Instagram. It would also be so appreciated if you have a moment, if you could please rate and review on Apple to help the podcast grow. Bye.